Well, gas prices are at record highs across the country, and these high energy costs, they are affecting all Americans, but they're affecting some people more than others. And so here with us to talk about that is Donna Jackson. She's the Director of Membership Development for Project 21 at the National Center for Public Policy Research, which is the nation's largest Black conservative think tank. Donna, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Well, so as of Monday, our average on gas prices, according to the AAA, were $4.89 a gallon. We're all feeling these effects. President Biden right now, he's blaming Russia. He's blaming these high gas prices on oil companies. Is this accurate? Who's really at fault here?
Oh, no. I mean, Biden owns this. I love it when he's always blaming Putin. Okay, let's start off. He created a perfect storm. So there was this disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, where the focus was on understanding white rage and pronouns, where they had more meetings about that than actually the Afghanistan pullout. So what happened? It was disastrous, and it encouraged Putin to invade. So he owns that because of the way he handled the pullout. Now add that to his war on domestic energy. Now he said when he was running that he was going to end the fossil fuel industry. Now the left and the Biden administration have been very strategic in the way they've attacked the fossil fuel gas industry. At every step, they block pipelines. There's litigations with permits. There's slow-rolling environmental analysis that they need to get drilling, to get pipelines. And then they've also signaled the financial industry that if anybody invests in the industry, then they were going to target them. So you got the banks, the financial institutions afraid to invest because this is a long haul. You don't just get up and drill today and then have everything you need. So they've attacked any industry that invests. Now with this SEC regulation, they're trying to normalize climate change and understand, because I've worked in the accounting industry for a long time. Financial institutions, investors use the financial statements to determine whether they want to invest in the industry. So if you have an industry that looks like fake numbers, I'm going to say they're fake numbers, but looks worse than it should using these climate change disclosures, then they're not going to invest their money. So in every aspect, you got bureaucrats from the EPA, you got the SEC, you have everybody targeting, and then you have the president that gives an expectation that says, I'm going to end your industry in 8 years. So why, even if I was a worker, why would I devote my life to working in an industry or a career that I know is going to end in less than 8 years? I can't guarantee a house or a mortgage. I can't determine that I'm going to be able to take care of my kids and put them through college. So in every aspect of this issue, this president has signaled that his expectation is that he's going to end the fossil fuel industry. He has a war on gas, and he's trying to force people into electricity, something that people don't want. I want to really, explain about how this parallels to what they've always did to African Americans, because they're doing to the American people what they've done to African Americans for decades.
Yeah, if you would get into that a little
because
bit, explain these consequences.
They have this, the left creates this agenda that Black people never asked for, and then they tell them to fall in line and do what they're told. That's the same thing they're doing with this fossil fuel industry. They decided that everybody should use electricity. And so they have this war on fossil fuel. And so they're going to force the fossil fuel industry into bankruptcy and then force the American people into vehicles, into a energy source a Green New Deal energy source that they didn't ask for. And they expect everybody to fall in line. Now, why do they use environmental justice? Because I can blackmail you For Black people, and they've been very good at the CRT, infusing this into it. For Black people, they've already given this narrative that we're too stupid, too dumb, too ignorant to know what's best for us. So they're the ones that's telling everybody what we need. You know, I don't agree with Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson or some of those guys. But on this issue, even they said that Black people shouldn't bear the burden of these high green energy deals that's burdening to the African American community. Now, people like me, that's a Black conservative, they would say, oh, she's just, suffering from multiracial whiteness, or she's just, being used. But even them, they said they're taking dark money, because they resent African Americans when they say the impact of pollution or dirty air, as they want to say, poverty has done more harm than any pollutant to any African American. But they use that environmental justice to push their issues through, because any American that says, you know what, I think that this is overhyped, I don't really want to buy these vehicles. I don't think that I want all of my energy sources to come from one source. They'll say, well, you're a racist. You're a white supremacist. You're an extremist. And so they use these kind of policies. They use these kind of environmental justice to blackmail the people into an agenda that they don't want.
Well, and I think my guess is that a common response we might hear from the left, if they heard you say something like this, is, there's going to be a little bit more pain initially and a little more hurt as we move away from dependence on fossil fuels. But ultimately, environmental justice and shifting to electric and shifting to solar, that will ultimately help minority populations. What would be your response to that argument?
Listen, what environmental justice is doing to Black people now is creating a new Jim Crow. If you look at California and places that they've been advanced in adopting environmental justice policies, they're also the most racist. I'm going to give you an example. In California, they needed 100 to 200,000 units in order to have enough housing for individuals, and it wouldn't encamp everybody in there, but just to have enough housing, affordable housing for people. Using environmental climate change policies, they were only able to get 1,824. It's a huge difference between 200,000 units and 1,800 units. The pain points, what they've decided is that Black people are disposable, that your life doesn't matter, because they are actually pushing people into poverty. When you have someone that's spending more than 30% of their income for gasoline, and they're making choices between whether their kids can have food to eat, or medicine, or pay their energy bills, electricity, gasoline, then that is not a pain point. That's genocide. They're destroying Black community. They're destroying Black businesses. In California, they forced every new building to have electricity instead of gas. The Black Chamber of Commerce is the one that came out. And the Latino Chamber of Commerce are the ones that came out and say, listen, this is hurting minorities the worst. Because you have small businesses that can't afford the fees, can't afford the taxes, can't afford the cost of these new regulations. In fact, if you look at a small business, which minority businesses generally fall into, they pay 4 times the cost of that big businesses pay for these rules. They usually can't withstand the expenses involved in being able to comply with these environmental regulations. So they're forced out of business. During the pandemic, 40% of Black businesses went under. So to understand the volatility that they already face, to pile on more regulations that they can't afford, plus the fact that the amount of paperwork that you have to do, the outside counsel that you have to get, actually increases that barrier and is pushing people not only out into poverty, but out of business, and is creating those larger wealth gap. That's not a pain point.
Yeah.
That's actually deciding who gets to live and who doesn't, because the cost of living expenses are too great. And if you tell me a pain point is I have to watch the pain of my child who can't eat, that's not an inconvenience. That's cruelty.
Yeah. Yeah. So then let's talk about solutions, because what you're saying is that, what the Biden administration is doing right now isn't working. So then how can we move forward in such a way where we are lifting everyone up through our energy policy in America?
Well, the first thing you do is you create a pro-energy policy, climate change policy. If you signal to an industry that we're not going to destroy you, maybe they'll want to create more. The other thing is that we should be doing an economic impact study of climate change policies that we adopt, so that we will see if the policies themselves are creating more hardship than the harm that is supposed to save us from, then we shouldn't be adopting these policies. But they won't do that because they already know the net result. They already know that people are hurting. But they had already decided long ago, because every black city in America that you see in poverty has been run by liberals for 70 years. They've already decided that we don't matter. And now what they've done is realize that that experiment worked, and they're imposing it on all the American people today. And so now you don't have a choice. The market should determine what we buy, not the administration telling us what we should buy. And that because people know what's best for them. But that their signal is you're too ignorant and you don't know us. You're too stupid. And so we have to tell you what you need.
So if we keep going down the path that we're going down right now, if the Biden administration is successful at continuing to press their climate change agenda, where are we headed as a country? We hear people throw out the word recession. What do you think?
I think that we're already in a recession. For a lot of people, maybe your affluent Americans, they're not feeling the pain. But I can tell you, your middle class and your working class people, if it's 8.5, the inflation rate is 8.5 for everyone. For them, it's like 11 to 12% because all of the goods and services that they use are more impacted by it. But we have to first make people aware of it, because people don't really realize that, they're imposing regulations on every appliance in your house that's making it more expensive, less efficient, and they're taking away all of your choices. So they've already decided it doesn't matter if you can't afford it. We don't care if you can't afford it. You can go without. And so we need to educate people. Then we need to make sure that when these regulations are coming out, that people are chiming in. The environmental justice, when it started, was supposed to be designed so that the communities impacted could give their input. Do you know that ever since they started that environmental justice in 1994, not one community of color have been able to chime in on any of these regulations they're doing in the name of communities of color?
Really? Wow.
That was the whole goal. If there's pollutants, if there's disproportionate impacts, whatever solutions, they were supposed to be they're supposed to have the opportunity to comment and be part of the process. They've 100% excluded anyone, from liberal to conservative, any black person that says, wait a minute, you're creating an environmental policy that are killing good blue-collar gateway jobs because our communities have fewer people with education, and these jobs give them the opportunity to be able to get into the middle class, to be able to be homeowners. They kill every job, every new factory in the name of environmental justice. Well, where's the justice in pushing me into poverty? That I don't have the income to be able to afford to move in your neighborhood. Mm-hmm. See, they always say, well, Black people live in communities where it's it's more pollutants, right? Well, they only live there because that's what they can afford. Yeah. If you didn't kill high-paying blue-collar jobs like killing the Keystone Pipeline, attacking Alaska pipelines. In Virginia, they did the same thing where they attacked the pipelines. Then they wouldn't live in those communities because they could be able to afford to live in better communities. But every time those jobs come up, the first thing they do, they come in, convince people to go in against those factories. Once that factory or project is killed, they're gone. They're not giving any substitute.
So are there any action steps we can take? Because it's really discouraging, honestly, hearing you talk and you think, my goodness, this is so unjust. What can I do?
Well, how many people really realize that this was going on?
Yeah.
Podcasts like this, different avenues where we're speaking out and saying, hey, there's this bill, HR, 255, whatever the bills are that are coming up, and this is what they're proposing. The more we make people aware of it, and we need to really contact those congressmen that are participating that may end up voting on some of these bills because this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Yeah. You would not believe how many grants have been given out in the name of environmental justice with zero impact to the communities. We need to contact our congressmen. Any energy issues, we need to make ourselves aware of it. There's the Energy and Commerce Committee that has hearings every day. We should be looking at their websites, make people aware of any policies that are actually going to be detrimental to the lifestyle and the cost of living for most Americans. They're out in the open, but they're not in the open. And so we have to be more diligent in being able to pay attention to what's going through, and then pulling individuals and coalitions together to say, no, we're fighting against this. Anytime you have the opportunity to go and speak and network with people who are involved in these issues, get involved with it. Even if you don't understand, ask them to give you an understanding of it. I was talking to a climate activist. And he's actually, he believes that it's overhyped, the climate crisis that they claim. First, it'll be climate crisis, then it'll be a catastrophe, it'll be, end of the world. And anyway, I asked him, I said, listen, I've lived in 6 different states. Some of the climate, when they're saying they're going to use solar panels and wind, it doesn't mesh because I know the climate there. Like in Michigan, it's cold. You barely get 2 months of summer. There's not that much sun. There's overcast. How in the world is that going to work? And he said, it's interesting that you said that because 32% of their energy comes from nuclear power, and then only 1% comes from wind and 2% from solar. In order to replace that, so currently they have 1,500 windmills. They'd have to add another 6,000 windmills. Okay, and remember, these windmills can't be next to each other. So think about the amount of land. He said, with the solar panels, you need 100,000 miles of land just to put the solar panels, and then it's still not guaranteed. It's not reliable. And the other thing is the electric grid doesn't store electricity. People don't know that. So every bit of electricity that you use from a solar panel has to be used right then. You can't store it up for the winter. So there's no way. So he said, this agenda that they have of pushing everybody into wind and solar panels would take 50 years in its best day. It's never going to happen. And then they're trying to force it in 8 years. So what they've decided is that people are expendable. This is the socialist agenda. They've already tried this with black communities. When you look at the destruction that liberals have done to black cities, know that they're trying to do the same thing to you as Americans. That's why it's important for us to vote. It's important for us to challenge these narratives, because I don't know a single human being that hasn't been in an electric blackout.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody. Why on earth would I then want everything I have to be on electricity, knowing that even with the current situation, we've had blackouts. Now I'm going to have my car, so now I'm stuck. It's not reliable. I mean, as a second car, fine. But as a first car, but even still, it's way too expensive, especially and I'm not talking about the price of the car, because some things just don't make sense. It's way too expensive when you have multi-generational homes. We know that. A lot of minority communities have multiple generations in the same house. Their utility bills are already too expensive, and now you're going to add a car in. Most of them don't live in homes. They live in apartment homes, right? Where's the electric plug-ups? Where's that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so, you can tell that they've decided, well, we just want everybody to ride the bus, and I'm not saying anything's wrong with that. I'm just saying you can already tell that what they want to do is actually lower the standard of living for most Americans. Because when you do that, then those individuals become more dependent on the government because they're living in survival mode.
Sure.
So when you have wealth, when you have accumulated wealth, and I'm not saying you have to be a millionaire, but when you have financial stability, then you make decisions for yourself. When you have financial instability, then you dependent on other people to tell you what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. But information, fighting back, really getting on those witnesses, making consumers, bringing consumers on those issues. Because every time I go to a hearing, I hear the, Honeywell or the people that are going to benefit from selling these products, right? I hear the people that are going to get the grants for these. I don't see consumer representation.
Yeah, it starts with education.
We have to have our consumers in there saying we're pushing back on this.
Sure.
And that's why I do it. I mean, I'm an African American. I'm not at all going to have them bully you because you're not an African American in my name when I didn't ask you for that.
Yeah.
And if it's hurting me, why on earth would I want to inflict that same pain on someone else?
Yeah.
Oh, what I want to do is get rid of the pain. I want to get rid of the pain for me, but I don't want you to go through the pain in the first place.
Sure.
And that's what we should be working towards. So, it takes a little diligence for us to pay attention to these issues.
Yeah.
But the honest to God, not one African American has ever said, you know what, climate change is so important to me, I would rather pay a higher energy bill. None have said that. Grifters, I call them race hustlers. I'm calling them what they are. Race hustlers that have been paid to say that. But if you talk to the grassroots people in the community, none of them want this agenda. Yeah. But a lot of people don't know that. That's why I go to these meetings and I tell white Americans, let them call you a racist, but push back and then bring me. I don't mean me, but just anybody who looks like me, as any neighbor, any black person, 5 of them in a community, they'll tell you the same thing. Yeah. Push back, question. Never let people, when people are telling you can't question something, even God said, come and let us reason together. Even God said, prove me and see if I won't open up the windows of heaven. So if God will allow us to question, how are you going to sit there and take this from an administration that says you can't?
Donna, tell us how we can follow your work and the work of Project 21.
Oh, you can follow us at nationalcenter.org, Project 21 at nationalcenter.org. We're always we're always excited to partner with people to get their input. We fight for issues that concern our communities, but all communities. Mm-hmm. And we definitely don't want these false narratives out here that says that all Black people just sit around and want to check. We believe in capitalism. We believe in upward mobility. We believe in self-determination. Amen. We believe in all of the same principles, believe it or not, that everyone else does. We love our Constitution, and we fight on behalf of any injustice, irregardless of the color of your skin. Because at the end of the day, we're all the same. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We're all created equal. We all can determine our own path, which is what and whatever that success is, which the Constitution guarantees us.
Absolutely.
So, we're there. We're open. Awesome. Just let us know.
Donna, thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And thank you so much for joining the show today. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. We're winning. So feel. I signed up for the fight. I feel positive.
Good.
And I'm
glad to hear you say that you're positive. That's positive. Good. We should all be positive.
We're David. We're slaying giants.
Amen.
Remember that? We'll win.
Donna, thank you.
Thank you for having me.